feasibly have 9 pieces of fabric and just move the pieces all around. And so every block is different in that a different piece has that one fabric and it rotates around. Or, but each piece, each block is the same color combination. So that means, though, if you have 9 fabrics and you stack 9 squares, and I'll show more about that, you'd have 9 blocks. You'd have 9 blocks. Well, that would make this only this big and 9 blocks, okay? So if you want this to be bigger, you either use this fabric twice, so you have 2 squares of it, or you start adding more fabrics in. And so when I did this the first time, this was the result, and I added a whole bunch of fabrics. And I actually ended up, of course, as I often do, with a lot more squares than this and a few other quilts. But anyway, this was the one that was done and in my house, and I kept it. And it even has a little of my kitty on it, I see. So we're going to look at stuff where you just get a square of fabric. So it's a great quilt for what they call layer cakes and for fat quarters. Not so much for the smaller pieces like charm packs and things like that. So, but when you have those larger pieces to use, it will work really well. This is another one. There's a company called Buggy Barn, but I'm not sure they're even in business anymore. The rumor mill got me to say that they may have ended their business, but it was 2 sisters that had a pattern company and fabric store. And the way they do this is the very same way that the puzzle block is done, with the exception that the pieces that make the outline of the heart, the pieces that make the background of the heart, and the pieces that make the heart get left the same. So you still shuffle it and stack it, and again, I know this will make more sense as we go through, but I just want you to see the finished piece. And this one I made for our bed, and it's called Heartburn. It was for our anniversary, and it's chili pepper fabric and reds and greens. I'm not a Christmas person, but I do love red and green, so it was kind of a fun one. And like the puzzle quilt, I ended up with a whole lot of extra heart blocks, and it made table runners and pillows and all number of things. But that's a fun one. So this one, you just have to have a little bit of organization in your 3 colors. So you have 3 basic colorways that you choose with this block. And I think the pattern's still available online, but it's Buggy Barn, and it's their heart block. And I have it with me somewhere. Let me check. I have it someplace. Anyway, I'm going to show you the most simple of this stacking option. And a little tip, I love Costco tubs. I save them and keep my projects in them. I have fat quarters and some other things here that you can, Valerie, if you need table space, just shove things over. So these started as squares, and I layered about 10 squares. Now if you use, and I'm demonstrating changing a blade, we often forget to change our blades and change our needles in our sewing machines. But when you change your blade and you start with a brand new one on this technique, you can cut a surprising number of fabrics at once. And I hope I just did that right. I don't think I did. Oh, nope, I didn't. Something's wrong. Come on, get in there. Oh, because, silly me, I'm doing it the wrong way. There we go. I usually take things off and set them in the very same order I took them off, so I put them on right, and I'm losing my concentration here. So, brand new blade will cut through a lot of fabric at once. I will tell you, but do be careful. You have a brand new blade and you're putting a lot of pressure on it, and do keep your fingers either with protective gloves on or well out of the way of the blade. So be safe, of course. And when you have that new blade in, you can cut easily 5 layers of fabric, even double, you know, the double layers, so you're 10 actually. You can cut a lot more than that. So I'll let you be the judge. When I made my Buggy Barn heart, I had 10 different fabrics, 20 layers of fabric, and cut through them. Because this method isn't about precision. I would not do that if I was cutting the templates for the baker's dozen or something like that. That you want to be a lot more precise, and you want to cut exactly and make sure each piece is fitting together beautifully. These are not so much that way. You end up trimming in the end. You end up kind of covering your basis of any little errors, not huge ones, but little. So let's say this pattern started out with, I'm going to use a combination of maroon and gray. In Missoula, Montana, we have the grizzlies, and so that's their colors. And so this would have been an entire square, and then and its measurement started out as looks like 10 inches, and it is not 10 inches wide because I'm going to eat up seams here. So this is 9.5 wide, but I still might want to leave room to trim. So, but 9.5 will work. So 9.5 by 10, but if you start with a layer cake, you're just going to trim off that little 1/2 inch, or not, trim it off later. So you have that, you have 2 pieces, and I just chose to have them be the same width. They don't have to be. This one could only be 1.5, and this one could be more. It can be whatever you want it to be, but I just made it simple. So these are cut 2.5, 2.5, and so I just cut those. I stacked them so that with the 2 colors, I stacked them so that I have gray, I have maroon, I have gray, I have maroon, I have gray, I have maroon. But my grays and maroons are a mix of lights and darks. They're a mix of levels of contrast. And I have a large stack of grays and maroons. So this also lent itself well to my temperament in quilting, to making a lot more blocks than I needed. So then what you do is you take one section and you take the top and move it to the bottom. I'm sorry, I went the wrong section. On this one, it's only one shift, sorry, the middle one. So you take one section and you move it to the bottom. And now I have a block that's gray, maroon, gray. And my next block is maroon, gray, maroon. And my next block, because all I did was shift this middle piece one down, And so I have to take each one. There we go. 1, 1, 1. They come off. Now I have this combo. So it takes that super planning out of your hands if you want it to. And it means that you're going to get some blocks that are a lot more homogeneous and some blocks that are super high contrast. And then probably a whole bunch that are sort of a middle range. So that's all there is to stack and shuffle. There are a lot of books. If on Pinterest or a Google search, you just simply look for quilts, stack and shuffle, stack the deck, not stack and whack, that's a little different. That's lining up the exact same pieces. But stack the deck, I know there's a stack the deck book, and then I brought a book that's stack another deck or something like that. And it's a second version. So when I did this, I have to admit that because I had so many, I ended up just simply leaving my larger pieces in a pile and my smaller strips in a pile. And what I end up doing is taking any two and sewing them together and then looking for one that matches one of them. So, because they did get mixed up a few times, and then when you end up with your finished blocks, you have these, and you can then make sure I'm not tripping. Then you sort of put them together in like the rail fence concept, and some of you've done that class with me. And you might want an arrangement of grays and maroons that aren't, that are more of a mix than these I'm putting up. But what I like to do with this kind of random quilt is I like to just put them up and then step back. And when I step back, I rearrange. So when I step back, I go, oh, that's way too light. There's a section that's all lights. I don't care if it's maroons or grays, but it's really light. Or I have these two fabrics right next to each other. I might like that. That might be fine, but I also might want to get this. And then this one, apparently I was taking medication and had a different one that I thought went together. But oh well. So there's that. So then when we get them all up here, and you can see my definition of maroon and gray is pretty broad, and I like that. I love scrappy quilts. They just make me happy. And so as you can see in this arrangement already, I've got a lot of maroons up here. That kind of reads, and I've got a lot of lights all bunched together. So I want to start mixing these up a little bit before I sew them together. So that's the way, the most simple of this style of stacking and shuffling works. So now I'll show you kind of the fun one, the puzzle, and then oops. And so for instance, in the heart, as I was saying, my maroon and gray definition was kind of broad. If if you look up Buggy Barn heart pattern, you'll find examples online, and colorways that are all different. You can go the red, white, and blue. You can go whatever color combinations you want. But some people might go with the cream being everything from golds and browns even to darn near whites. and the reds being pinks to maroons to true cherry red. The greens going from pine evergreen dark greens to yellow spring greens. And so the variety is up to you. Now, okay. Now when you do the stack, have a couple things to consider. The thing I love about this is it's pretty forgiving. It just gives us a whole lot of range. So you could go to Confidence Stitch or your favorite fabric stores and get fat quarters. And that works great. And then you just stack your fat quarters. Here's a lovely range. I tend to go with the greens and teals and stuff, and I just found myself right in front of that row at Confidence Stitch and grabbed 9. This pattern has 9, so I have 9 fabrics that I chose. So that'd be the least number. This is all honeybees and goofy kind of kid-ish, and I like to make a lot of quilts for our Quilts for Kids program here in Missoula. And so I have a whole bunch of different things. And when you make a baby quilt, a 9 by 9, or sorry, 3 by 3 is a nice size. 4 by 4 might be a nice size. Or if you're making it for a larger child, you might end up with like a 4 by 6. So I thought, okay, I'm going to just get a whole bunch. I'll probably have leftover because that's the way it works. But this would be an example of at least 9. So I'd end up with a square quilt. Go ahead.
How many fat quarters would you need to buy to do the quilt?
To do a quilt that size, the puzzle quilt size?
The puzzle one.
That's 4 by 5, I think, or 4 by 6. Let's see.
Is it like
I think it's 4 by 5. You would need 1 fat quarter. Well, you wouldn't need 1 fat quarter. Let's see, they're 18 by 20. You could probably, depending on your pattern, you could probably get 2 squares out of 1 fat quarter. So you could duplicate a fabric, but increasing your number of fat quarters gives you more variety of fabrics in your quilt, and so that might be a better way to go. And it depends on your pattern. I like to cut a 12-inch square for this particular pattern and have excess rather than get to it all being sewn together and realize, oh shoot, one of these is short, and so I'm going to have to trim them all to that size. And so they end up being smaller than I thought. But this is, let's see, 4 by 5, so you'd need at least 20 squares of fabric. Now, if you can get your squares out of a larger piece of fabric that you have at home, great. Then you can duplicate the fabric. When you duplicate the fabric, then you have a choice to make. Sometimes you might end up, when you've shuffled, getting the same fabric in the same square. So and this is on interfacing. This is the first one I made, and I keep this in my pattern envelope. And it's numbered, and so you have an A section. 3 of these are called A. 4 of them are called C, and 2 of them are called B's. And so what you do is you put all your A's together, you put all your B's together, and then you put your C's together in the order they're numbered. So you have A 1, 2, and 3, you have B 4 and 5, you have C 6 to 9, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah.
Where do we get the pattern?
This pattern has come out on, this is really old actually. And this pattern has come out a number of times in a variety of publications, redone. Basically, you don't need this. If you take a square and draw it on interfacing, and then see here's the A line, it goes across at an angle, and then 1 and 2, the division. So if you want to take a photo of this, you're welcome to. And then you move the A triangle away and you draw the B to C line and cut that in, not in half, but 2 pieces. And then you have your C grouping and you draw those. So if you want to come and get a good picture of that, you're welcome to, or pass that around. But you know, you don't need 9. You could do 10. You could do 5. You could, you can do it as any arrangement you want. You just need to think about where your seams connect and what order you're going to put them together, so you don't have to do a partial seam or a Y seam. We don't like those.
So you put the seams together according to the numbers?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I would, and I'll demonstrate this. I'm going to demonstrate this block entirely. And so now here's another one that comes as templates. And it's, this is something to be aware of at Amazon versus buying something in your local quilt shop. On Amazon, when you order something like this, or if you buy directly from a company like Creative Grids, or of course come here to Confidence Stitch and you're buying your pattern right there and it's a reputable company, you are getting that company's reputation of precision. This was a purchase I made not knowing this next tip, and that is I bought it online because I couldn't find it locally, and they send you anybody's brand, and so it's not necessarily a guaranteed precision. So Amazon doesn't necessarily send you the actual one you're ordering.
So you're recommending that if we want precision items, buy them locally?
Buy locally or buy a
Which is
brand
generally- yeah,
online if
yeah,
you can't
yeah.
find it locally. So Creative Grids is one. You guys have,
We don't have those templates, but.
okay.
And what are those
And-
templates called?
Well, Creative Grids makes this one, and honestly, I can't remember the name because this is the one I got from Amazon, and it's not labeled anything. So, but it is, it's, you know, it works. And this particular, I better set it. I don't know where to set it so you can see it better. But so it has a diagram on every pattern piece so that you can see where it goes. So you have this one here, you have this one here, and you have this one here. So it goes in this direction. Now you could draw that roughly out on a piece of interfacing or paper or whatever and make your own templates. And this is only 5. Now
How wide was that?
this is 12. This one here is 12. That one I think is 11 and a half. But I made it
Can't you
plenty
just
big.
put this down on your stack and then
Yes,
cut?
exactly. But then you don't have this piece anymore.
Right.
So, which may not be a problem. So I just wanted you to realize that's how you can do it. But when you get a pattern for a puzzle quilt, this one is Becky's Fabrics and Bernina in Colfax, Washington. So I don't know how I ended up with this, to tell you the truth, but that's the one. And it was just in an envelope and had this. I think it even said, it gave a paper version of it and said to redraw it on interfacing because it's easier to handle than paper. And it's also easier on your rotary cutter. So here's the thing though, is that when your fabrics are cut 2 layers in a square, you have them with wrong sides facing. each other. Okay, so you have the wrong sides together. So if you just leave them in that stack and you cut this pattern, you're going to have some squares that are the mirror image. And that's okay. Again, this is so forgiving. But if you thought you were going to get them all the same, you won't. So, and what I like to do if I've cut multiple layers of a fabric, I do like to separate them because I like to make my mix and match as diverse as possible. And you'll notice that these two, I think, are smaller than the rest of it because I had smaller pieces of fabric. And I just eked it out and thought, okay, I'll put those on top so I know I don't want to skimp on those. So now I'm going to stack here.
I have to admit, when my friend talked me into learning how to quilt, I thought, I've sewn all my life, it can't be that hard.
Oh my gosh,
It's not
guess all the
anything like
different
sewing.
things. All the different things we can do. It's a Dr. Seuss version of sewing, right? All the places you can go.
Oh, true.
Yeah. They're fun. They're fun. And in something like the first one I showed you with the strip and the two strips on the end, you would want to think about alternating your stack so you have gray, maroon, so that as you slip one down, now you've got gray with maroon and maroon with gray. But in this one where you have 9 different things, it doesn't matter what order it's in. Doesn't matter. So I chose 12 fabrics in this case because I wanted to have enough to either make 2 small baby quilts or a larger kid-size quilt. And I'm going to mix these up in a different order on one stack than I have on the other. And I'm not like thinking about anything, I'm just doing it different. Because then the different pieces won't be completely duplicated in their arrangement from one stack to the other. And I'm going to cut them separately. There. So here's one stack and here's the other. So we'll cut one at a time. This is my piece that's smallest, and so I want it visible when I do my cutting because I know that I cut it and it's my fave, and so I know that I cut it in a with a skimpy amount. I'm lining up one corner.
So you always do that, you put the smallest on the top. So
Yeah, so you know that you're not like getting it off on that and really reducing the size. Get one corner lined up here. And that will go here. And if you happen to have cut where you got a little bit of selvage in there, keep that on the far end of your lineup. And then that'll be treated like a smaller piece. And then take an edge from that corner you lined up and kind of get them. Now these squares, you might notice like that cut is not very good. I was sloppy and rushing getting it ready for today. That's okay because this isn't the point where you want to be careful. Well, you probably want to be careful, but you don't need to be. I mean, who doesn't want to be careful? Well, sometimes I don't.
Do you like that gray color better than the yellow one?
I really love this gray one. I've done stained glass, and it's designed ergonomically for your wrist. Mm-hmm. So you hold it, it's called a pistol grip, and in stained glass it's called a pistol grip. So I don't know what it's called if it's called anything. So here's I'm putting them face down, If I want all the design to be uniform, if I have some reason for that, then I'll want to put those face down also. But I've got 12 pieces of fabric, remember. And I'm going to put this on here and see if I can get it to fit in that smaller piece. I can, yay. All right, so now I have my ruler. And here, you know, again, precision isn't the name of the game here. I have a new blade. I'm going like that. I'm going to set the A's aside. I'm going to go to the B's, so BB, and all the C's are here. I'm going to set my B's aside. And now I can cut these apart. So if you look at this line here, if I went to cut that, I intersect. And as you probably know, when you're using a rotary cutter, if you go beyond the measurement you want, you leave in the fabric that you have left, you leave a little like 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch little snip, and you don't want that in your piece. So I take the line that has no intersection to go all the way across, got that, separate it out, take this, this cutter is actually made to go with one of those rulers that has a ridge. I forget what they're called. I don't like the ruler, but I do like the cutter, so oh well, go figure. Gotta blend these things. I sew a lot, and so having my, and I'm old, and my wrist needs to have good support. So I have the B's cut.
Cut off the edges here?
Don't need to.
Oh, okay.
Don't need to. So now I have my C. Because you have to trim at the end.
Okay.
Since you're not cutting in a way that you have seam allowances, as things go together, so as these two go together, they're not going to line up here anymore because they've sucked up a 1/2 inch total. So at the end, you have all this stuff that doesn't look like it fits. And you go, oh dear, this is too bad. What did I do wrong? Nope, nothing. You trim it at the end, and you just decide what size you want to do it, and you're done. Okay. And there's that. So all my pieces are cut. I'm gonna go like this again. I have to remember how it goes. There we go. All right, there's that. Here's this. Here's this. And here's this. So I could think about, there's these 3 pieces. I could just leave it at 3 and not divide up. That's okay too. Then you have 3 pieces and you just have 3 different colors in your block. You can make smaller blocks. You could do, so this, while this is a pattern I bought, it doesn't, you can pretty much go with dang near anything you want at home. So just make sure your lines give you that clean cut so that then seams can go back together and you figure out what has to sew to what in order to get it in the order. So now I'm gonna go ahead and, no, I'm gonna take this off because I have it here. I'm just gonna put these here. Probably they'll end up just going away, but oh well. There they are. And here they are. Okay, now I'm gonna take this one and put her down. I'm going to take this one and take 1, 2, and put them down. And take this one and go 1, 2, 3, and down. Doesn't matter where I go next. 1, 2, 3, and 4. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go. 5, 6, and 7. Got my little bumblebees down there. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then this one will come here. Okay, last one came up on top. So I've got something different in every piece. And as I go down that layer, they're all gonna stay different, okay? So to show you a little bit, you can do this in chain sewing really easily. So I'll have A1 and 2 are gonna be my first two I sew together. And I'm gonna start so that the interior of the seam is lined up, not the exterior, okay? So the interior of the seams are lined up. Turn on our machine. Come here. You know, 1/4 inch, I'm gonna say, in quilting is important to maintain a nice steady 1/4 inch, but this quilt is not particularly sensitive to that. So if that's something you struggle with, this is the quilt for you. But you are dealing with off the grain cut edges. So they're not perpendicular to the grain. So you're gonna have a little bit of stretch, so you don't wanna be pulling and tugging these. Don't think they should match at the end, like a lot of pieces do, okay? So now these, so the next two, I'm gonna pull up.
So tell me again how you worded that. You're lining up the interior.
So 1 and 2, so this
Yeah.
is the interior edge, this is the exterior
Okay, line up
edge.
interior edge. Okay.
Yeah, so you're gonna line those up. And then when I sew this pair to this is the interior
Interior.
edge,
So
so
it's
you line
always
up there, yeah. So here, and so you can chain sew that whole stack of A1 and 2. So you just line them up, and again, don't be pulling. Don't worry if they don't match. So I'm not going to sew this whole stack, but you get the idea. So you just sew these two together, keep going, keep going, keep going, all right? Then, when you get all of them done, let's not cut any microphone cords. Be nice to confidence stitch. Okay. And you want to keep them in the same order that you had them. So this is how they go. And the way you'll know is bumblebees are on top of these little green and yellow flowers. Bumblebees are on top of these green and yellow flowers. So they're not going together necessarily. Okay, now this, again, you're going to go to the interior seam. Now when you have a point like this, you want to move that up just a hair so that you have your 1/4 inch spot here that it intersects. So you're going to start your 1/4 inch seam where that intersection is. So I've slid that up. If I go right here, I'm starting my seam and I'm missing this piece. I'm not sewing this light gray piece in. So you slide that up, and then that's where you start. And then that edge will be lined up nicely. But look, oh, finger press. I'm a finger presser. You could go to your machine and press everything as you sew if you really like to do that. I don't.
Do you cut all your threads after every?
You know, at home, I sew on a Janome that I push a button and it cuts my threads. And I'm here to tell you, I didn't think that would be such a joy, but whoa, I love it. I love it. Okay, and in the interest of time, I'm not gonna keep sewing, but again, you would have this whole stack sewn, this seam, you'd pile those up in the order that they were, and when you have chain sewing, they're in that order, so you just take them off in the order they belong and put them back there. Then you take this 2-piece, sew it to that. So I've had this 2-piece and I've sewn it to this. Okay, so now I've got this. Now I'm going to set my A's. A's are only 3 pieces. I'm going to set them aside. Now I'm going to take my B's, and the same thing as my A's. I start on the interior edge, so this edge, to do my sewing. And where you have a pointy connection, the angle that the seams come together creates a little point. Make that stick up so that your 1/4 inch intersects it. Ouch. Did that weird. My hand in the way of.
Does the machine cut your beginning threads?
It does, because it's cut the end at the perfect amount that doesn't create thread boogers underneath. Oh man, do I love that machine. It's a little heavier though. It's a bit of a haul. Okay, so now I have these 2 pieces set here. They're not ready yet. So now I want to look, oops, my phone just caught on the back of my seat. So 6 and 7, 8 and 9. So I'm going to sew 6 and 7 together. 6 and 7. I'm going to start at the interior. Boom.
And so why do you choose these two in
Numbered. 6,
you go
7,
by the number
8,
in order.
9.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
in the order.
Okay.
So 6, 7, and that, if you create your own puzzle, that's what you'd have to figure out is, okay, what has to go together next? What 2 go together to fit to another one? And
So you don't end up with weird angles.
so you don't have, like, say these 2 pieces ended like this. No, you don't want that.
Right.
Yeah, so you'd have to make sure you have nice clean lines. Oops, that got a little too high. And again, make your little pointy piece if it doesn't line up squarely, which most of them won't.
I can see myself ripping out mistake after mistake.
You know, do one square first
Yeah.
and make yourself go, I'm not tearing this out,
Okay.
unless it's like a really, major
yeah.
thing.
And then
But
just
if you think, oh, I got that off, don't tear it out, because it's going to be okay, I think. Now, so the next 6, 7, 8, so now we sew these to these. I have 2 interiors, but on my C section, this is the interior.
Okay.
So I'm going to start here.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to start here. So I have my little point so that I have a nice 1/4 inch seam. And now I'm sewing across the seam, so I'm gonna press to the dark, finger press, just a little fingernail scrape. Again, don't pull and tug. These are all on, not bias exactly, but weird angles. So, okay, so now I have that. Now this is my interior edge. So I'm going to sew here. And if you are chain piecing, that's going to be like so automatic. You'll just one after another keep picking up the same spot. And if you end up with chain piecing and putting something back in order in a way that shouldn't have been, now you just finish that thought, Suzanne. Okay. If you end up with like 2 of these bees and they're even next to each other, oh well, it's okay. This design isn't intended to create like secondary stars or secondary circles or something like that, that if you have it the wrong direction, it's not going to work. It's intended to be crazy quilt style. Next thought. Next thought is, if you have an intersection here and this seam, it usually works best to press so that this thicker part here doesn't get folded back on itself, because then it's real thick.
Oh,
Okay? So you're pressing toward the single piece, if that makes sense, I hope. And I just got myself out of alignment a little bit, but I did not pull and tug. I just kind of slipperied my way around there. I have to take my phone out of that pocket. It keeps getting caught on the chair. I'm going to fall over. Okay, now my C bunch, did I get that right? Yeah. So now see how much smaller it is though? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now A, B, C, you'd think would go in order A to B. No, because these 2 seams have to come together in order to go across that whole one. So B to C in this case, they might have named this differently, but yeah, they might have done that differently. And pretty much we're on outside edges now, so it doesn't matter which edge you go to. Oops, I picked this up by accident. Where does it go? Oh, it goes here. There we go. Okay. So I'm gonna show. This is what happens when you get weird and distracted. So here's these 2. I'm gonna come back and think, concentrate, and put that interior edge together. Now that doesn't line up perfectly. That's okay. Make it a straight line by just kind of going along however you want to. I'm gonna finger press this. It didn't need to get done. Okay. We had the discussion in our class at Lifelong Learning how sewing is not a COVID-friendly class. You're licking your fingers and helping somebody thread their needle, and now your spit's on their needle. Oh dear. Don't pull and tug. I will say that a number of times. Just kind of keep things as nice and flat as you can do, because that's the thing on these puzzle quilts that can get it misshapen and bubbly. It can poof up inside. So now we have this. Now look here, this is not a straight line, okay? Not a straight line, and it has to go to a straight line. So this is where you can decide to either eyeball it using this, because this is a pretty straight line since I started on the interior edge. And so I can put that on top and just sort of go, okay, somewhere I'll follow that edge. But I can set this down here, take my ruler, and I'd have my longer ruler, and then boom. Now I have a pretty straight edge. So here I am, and here I am. So come here, so I have my 1/4 inch offset, and then I'll come along here. Gently move things around. Finger press where you need to. And you can, I'm in the interest of time kind of zipping along here, but you can finger press or press every single step. That's absolutely fine. I don't think I've ever done that in my life, but here we go. Now, here's this, and it's all out of shape, right? I won't trim it on getting this done. I'll trim it after I get them all done, even both piles, because whichever one appears to be the smallest, that's going to be my guide for what I cut all of them. And so this one, let's say I've got them all done, and let's say this is my smallest, and I've pressed it, and it measures 10 1/4. It measures, go to your shortest edge, 9 3/4. So on a wild guess, I'm going to say 9 1/2 might be my final square. So if I then use a square ruler and I have one at home that is 9 1/2, so that'd be great. And I could just set this down without anything around it, of course, so I don't cut into everything under the sun. I'd press these all flat, and I'd set my ruler down. And let's say this is my least favorite fabric. I might take my 9 1/2 and slide it so I get the least of that. Yeah. All right. Maybe I'm deciding this I want in absolute center, if that's possible. Then maybe I've marked on my square where to get this point. And so I aim for that and then cut. Okay? So then these end up being cut and all arranged differently. And in this centerpiece, I will have one that has the hive, one that has the little bees, one that has the squares, one that has all of that. So they will all change. Each block will change over time. So that is how that gets done. It's a super fun way, I think, to embrace the love of fabric, because you aren't, and to free yourself, because it's not that critical to have had, oh, I don't like those two together, yeah. Oh, well, it's one block, and it's going to be next to something else in the next block. So it's not
So
this.
it's freeing.
Yeah,
I need
it
that.
is. It is. I think it's very freeing. So again, you might have made some choices about fabrics. I had this stack of vac quarters that I just love. And I would suggest that you think about contrast. So this is, in this row here, I've got a nice contrast. This is probably about the lightest, and it appears lighter than any of them. That's good. This appears darker than any of them. That's good. And so, oops, sorry, that's my don't get distracted now alarm. And I have a nice mix. These two are pretty similar, but their pattern keeps them separate. So that's, in terms of contrast, they're pretty similar. But this one within it has a nice contrast that makes it quite different from this. Even if I go to another, that's pretty close, but still different. So this piece has a lot of variability across the whole fabric. So you want to think about that. You want to think about this pile has a lot of repetitive, design, so it's not a big pattern. And then this range has a lot of similarities in it. I think I might want more of this deeper purpley red color. So I might want to look in my stash and see if I can find that. I don't think I have enough variability in that range. I think I have a lot of the greens to this right here is hit pretty well. Pulling just a little bit of white or a white pattern is nice. I think it brings in again a mix that moves through the quilt. So color-wise, don't sweat bullets over it. Don't give yourself headaches about it. Jump in, go for it, play with it, have some fun, and you will learn a lot. This puzzle quilt was one of my earliest quilts I made, and it's in the top dozen probably anyway, and I learned so much because I just really put caution to the wind and just pulled a bunch of fabrics. I think I started, I might have started, I started with this one. This is a modern, like hand-dyed sort of piece, and it has this orange, purples, and varying levels of purple, a blue, a green. If I find a bigger piece of it in here, it might have, here's another piece here. But like I said, I had a lot of different fabrics. And so I took that and anything that matched any of those colors, I pulled it in.
Oh,
And so this one, it has that color for sure. It's got some other stuff that's like, well, I don't know that these weird plums or whatever they are, that, these two, I don't know, but it works. And I learned the lesson of yellows in this quilt. When you use yellow, which this quilt does, is a lot of yellow, but it's intentionally a lot of yellow because bumblebees are yellow. Where you use yellow, the rule of yellows is if you don't want yellow to be a dominant color in your quilt, don't go more than 20%, even 10, of the total color. Yellow is a light catcher, and it pulls your eye to it. So where you use yellow, that's what you see. And when I think of this quilt, I think of it having a lot of yellow gold. And it really isn't any more than blues and maroons and purples, but it hits your eye. Yeah. So to learn from my lessons. I won't call them mistakes, they're happy accidents. This design, I think, looks good with sashing because it's so busy. But when it doesn't have sashing, it's really interesting too. So I wish I had an example of that, but I don't. And the hearts as well, because you're putting so much in each block that is entertaining to the brain and the eye, the sashing just gives you that resting place to go, oh, I'm moving to another block now. Okay, I can take a breath. And it's not too overwhelming. Oh, here's the pattern. This is the buggy barn heart pattern, and so you can see on this example, it's reds and creams and blacks. And so that's it's a really nice one. So let me show you, because it's set up in the same way. And this, what they recommended was using freezer paper. So you have the shiny side on one side and the dull side on the other. And it's hard to see without color, but this is your heart. So, well, your heart, but the heart. And so that's the heart. And this is actually a big chunk, but it's the outline fabric. And then it comes up here and over and down. This is the center. The center of the heart is only these two pieces. The exterior is all this. And so it is numbered and lettered so that the exterior and outline and the interior go together, and you figure that out. It's also numbered and lettered in a way that tells you, like this one, what order to sew what to what. But when you use the freezer paper, that glossy side, you press it to your top layer of fabric. And then it holds stiff. And then you cut that out, just like I cut out this. But it doesn't shift and wiggle like this does. And because the design's more intricate than that, it's nice to have it stay put.
Okay, for more.
Yeah, for just more accuracy. But again, on this, wherever you sew a section together, you're gonna have, this doesn't fit that right, or it goes at a weird angle now. So you might have to trim, and the instructions give you really, really good information and directions about how to do that. And what you do is you take all your creams and you cut them, all your reds and you cut them, and all your greens. You have three, or whatever three colors you're using, black, cream, red, or whatever. And so you have all your color, and you cut it all out with the freezer paper on the top layer. Then you take the outline pieces and you shift them over to, like, here's the green pile, here's the red pile, here's the cream pile. So I take all the outline pieces and I set them up here. I take all the outline pieces, I set them up here, all the outline pieces, set them up here. I take the red and come over to the green. I take the cream and come over to the red, and I take, whatever I said, left out, and come over here. Then I take all the background pieces and I set them up here. And then I move them in the third arrangement. So it's a little tricky to get it started, but once you do, it's a lot easier than it sounds. It's very, if you're a kinesthetic learner, if you're a hands-on learner, it's not that hard. It's not hard. It's real clear when you start touching it and seeing it. It's real clear what you have to do. So enjoy. Let me make sure I shared everything. Oh, one last example here. This is with curves. So there are a number of patterns that this kind of design is out there. There's one that's called onion skins, maybe onion something. Anyway, This one's called Canyon Dance, this over here. This is called Radiant Suns. You can get Radiant Suns in different sizes, if I'm not mistaken. And what you do is, while you don't have this arrangement of your square and you're cutting this way and that way, you have actual templates that are the right size for the curve, because curves kind of need to be the right, one has to be that 1/4 inch bigger, one has to be the 1/4 inch into the other side. So you have the templates, but you set the templates out in the arrangement of the block on your fat quarter. So let's say you have a stack of fat quarters, and let's say I'm going to use this green, blue, purples thing. So here's my center. Here's my next one. And see how they don't fit because they have that extra 1/4 inch. So they don't fit, but you'd set them on your fat quarter, and then you'd be sure to get everything you need done. Okay? So you'd set this one down, move these out of the way, cut it out, slide it over. You set this one in with as little waste as possible and cut it and set it over. Then when you put them all back, you do the shuffle thing.
Right.
So you rotate your colors so that you get a nice mix. And so that's another way to do the stack and shuffle. Oops, great. Oh, that's out of place. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna have fun putting this all back in here, aren't I?
Now the Radiant Suns, it looks like the flower is pretty much all the same color, or,
This pattern is set that way, but if you get on Pinterest and look for Radiant Suns, you'll see the whole thing is greens and blues.
Okay.
And it's just this lovely flow of curvy, windy color.
It seems like if you wanted to do that, it would be a little harder to shuffle your colors.
Well, you have orange and reds,
Right.
yellows and reds, and you have, yes, you're right. So your smaller pieces, you might have just a group of yellows, yellow oranges, and like these two smaller pieces maybe. And then as you go out to the next two, you might have a range of color and so on, yeah. But in some of the blocks, you have a reddish, orangish range, and in some of the blocks you have, but see how this has the reddy pink, and then it goes to purple, so somewhere that got mixed in there, I don't know. But yeah, so you can plan it, you can do, I'm only gonna cut that little piece out of this pack of color, and then you don't need huge pieces. But if you want to do it more in this mood of mix and match, then you would just set them all out on your stacks of rectangles or squares or whatever works. And in your patterns, for those of you who haven't sewn with templates and something like this, it'll tell you how much yardage you need of the colors in order to do the pictured one. If you want to do something different than that, you'll be looking at a different arrangement. But this one has more of the rotation. Okay. So, fun. Oh, and then I have these here because I was looking, this was the arrangement I had. This one I did use in my bees, and so I had it in my mind. But it's a gold maybe, but it also kind of picks up this weird green.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. So I thought, these, and this is a piece here from Confident Stitch that I have bought twice now. I said, saying, I love that fabric. I don't think I bought that, and I got another yard or two. And oh gosh, I really like it. Okay, I really like it. So anyway, I thought, well, these three kind of go with this. I'm gonna keep them aside because they might be the things I wanna use for sashing or borders or whatever. And, oh, and let me show you too, just a fun little quilter's trick. Some of you have done this on quilts before, but this is, if you've sewn, you know it's called a flange. And what it is it's a folded piece of fabric that's sewn into this seam between these two fabrics.
Oh, okay.
And it's what I call a zinger, some people call it a zinger. And I usually am looking to make just a little tiny sliver of something bright
Oh,
that gives me a pop of pulling things together.
What size is it when you tie it?
Well, it's about an inch, but I have found that if I do 3/4 inch to 7/8, somewhere in there, so it's, you know, it just makes this is probably a 1-inch cut because it's about a 1/4 inch that shows, and then a 1/4 inch, 2 layers of 1/4 inch on the seam. So, no more than an inch probably. It gets, if you're gonna make it more than a 1/4 inch showing, then cut a piece of fabric and sew it in. Because, it's gonna get caught in the quilting, or it'll get ripply because it doesn't lay flat or whatever. But the little tiny sliver of it is nice. And there's also a really cool way to do that same strip and a binding, and that's kind of fun. But
It's a beautiful
that's-
quilt.
It's a fun one. It's a fun one, and I threw that white in there, and I'm glad I did. I thought, you know, I haven't really gone that full range of contrast with this, so I threw that really. It's kind of a light blue.
Did you do the, I don't know what you call it. but-
Quilting?
Yeah, is
Yeah.
that called quilting? Okay.
Yeah, and
I
so
like
the
with the dark color,
stitching.
yeah.
Yeah, I did too. I like that. Thank you. The quilting is a free motion. I have a Gamma long arm, and I love it.
Oh, it's so
I love using it. It's fun. So that's all.
That's a lot of information. Thank you.
So enjoy
Yeah.
your fabrics, enjoy